Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, I have a unique conversation with digital nomad Claudia Alick. Greetings everyone, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of courage. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gift, your time and your attention, means the absolute world to us. And when I say us, it's not the royal we this time. I have a guest here live with me. She goes by the name of Claudia Alick. Claudia is an inclusion expert, intersectional inclusion expert, an artist, an amazing person, a traveling nomad spreading amazing theater and awesomeness everywhere she goes. How did I do on that intro?
That was lovely. That was absolutely lovely.
Anything you want to clean up or clarify in there?
That digital nomad.
There it was. Digital was the word.
Yeah.
Digital nomad.
Performance, person, looking at stuff. I'm on a listening tour. There's a lot of verbs and things you could use to describe what I'm doing. You did a great
Oh,
job.
I appreciate that. So we're going to do it a little bit differently here at the Celebration Academy. You know that usually when I have a guest, we do a strict interview, or tradition, not strict, more like a traditional interview where I sit down, I ask my guest a bunch of questions. Claudia actually has been staying with Adora and I, so we've had a chance to kind of kick it and relax a little bit more. And we decided that rather than just a straight interview, what we want to do is have a conversation. So you'll notice that Claudia's also going to ask me questions. And rather than me reframing them and turning them back on her like I would do in an interview, I'm actually going to answer them. So if you notice, Tom, you're talking a lot more than usual. It's because this is a conversation rather than an interview. And we wanted both of us to share because Claudia has some questions she wanted to ask me. So that's the way we're going to do it. Hope that framework helps. Anything you want to clarify or add to the intro that we got going here?
I think that sounds brilliant.
Nice. We're off to a good start. 2 for 2. So why don't you break down a little bit, what's this listening tour that you're on?
So my project is called #Walkabout. I had an amazingly beautiful, fulfilling, life-consuming job of producing community collaborative performance at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival for about a decade.
Wow.
And I had decided, I'm leaving, I'm going to move to San Francisco and start my transmedia social justice company. And in the small gap of time between me announcing I was leaving and actually leaving, I started receiving all these invitations. And it made me remember that I had been saying no to invitations because I was too busy, because my presence was really necessary. My physical presence was necessary for a lot of the work that I was producing. And that meant that I was missing my friends' birthdays and their weddings, but also I was missing people's productions. I had these deep relationships with artists and art makers nationally, and I'd never seen their spaces. I'd never seen where they did their work, where they lived. So I have been saying yes to invitation. The project is one where it has a performative score. So one of the rules is I have to say yes to an invitation as long as it does not result in a no to another invitation. So when you invited me to do this interview, I was like, yes.
That's awesome.
And so far it's resulted in surprising things that I never would have planned. I, was in a dance concert in New Orleans.
Wow.
I had no idea. I ended up at this beautiful sort of artistic ceremony that was almost like church, but it was secular and all about artists. And I thought I'd been saying yes to go to a restaurant. So these yeses have been resulting in the best things. And the listening tour is part of my exploration of leadership in the performance field. I'm trying to forecast where are we going, what do we need in terms of resource management, in terms of different types of models that are more inclusive, different types of hiring processes. So I've just been traveling, and I'm also president of the board, or co-president of the board of Network of Ensemble Theaters. So I've been just trying to get a bead on what do those theater makers need? What do those performance makers need? How is that different than the people who are making theater in a more traditional regional theater model. How is that different than some of my friends doing things that are more performance art or more social justice activated, artivism. And so far, I have been learning the best things.
That's wonderful. So many questions come from that answer. One is that it sounds like before you could start to say yes to everything, you had to give a big no to something, to the organ.
Aww.
Is that a harsh framing?
I hadn't thought of it in that way. But yeah, I guess it has been, there's been a lot of me receiving emails from people for the last 6 months being like, hey, Claudia, can you help me? Can you do this? And me being like, I'm not there anymore. So you will need to find this other person to help you do those things. But yeah, this has just felt like all positivity and all yeses.
How did, because some people might be curious though, it sounds like it was a dream job for many people, for 10 years.
Yes.
How did you have the courage or the adventureness to kind of leave a steady job and go on this bold year of yes? How did you come up with that?
I don't want to give people the impression that I am a special, shiny person that has more clarity than any of them. After I'd finally, made the announcement and was leaving, I was going through my notes and I realized I'd been trying to leave since 2014. I had small notebooks of my company and the plans that I'd been making and building. So this was something that was a slow burn. It was happening over time. I recall receiving this beautiful plaque that commemorated the 10 years of work. And when I received that plaque, I didn't go, yay! I can't wait for another 10 years. I remember going, wow, 10 years? That was not the plan. So I can say nothing but positive things about Southern Oregon, about Ashland, about the human beings that make art and love and are super passionate about that art making. And I should also admit, I'm not completely gone yet. Just 4 minutes ago, I was literally writing Bill Rausch, the artistic director of the festival, because I'm directing her audio play. So I'm still kind of working there, digitally though, because I'm a digital nomad.
There you
I'm
go.
out in the world.
So you reframed it in a way that it met the intentions you have for this year.
Indeed. But I think that's going to be the last project for a while, and then I'm going to be an independent agent. I think that's really healthy.
What advice do you have, if you're willing to share, for people who, sometimes it's like what you're describing, it's almost harder when you're in a good thing, where it's not that you hate your job and you hate your life and you hate the place you live. It's like everything's really good. I love these people. They're affirming. But I want to do something else. How do you take that leap? How do you start to do that transition?
Well, I think that part of it is, and I'll be honest, I'm not really a big advice giver. Now that I've said that, I'm not sure if that's totally true, because I like to give my opinion about things.
Okay, let's do that.
But again, I don't want to give people the idea that I'm a guru or that I have any kind of special expertise. I think that having a vision that is outside yourself, something that is larger than yourself that you are trying to get to, that's what's always motivated me. That's always been sort of like one of my animating impulses. And for years, I was able to do that while I was rooted in a specific place, in a beautiful town, and attached to a large institution. The visions that I have now are larger than one institution. They're national, and they're collaborative, and they are deeply social justice activated. And it was impossible to effectively do them rooted and based in Southern Oregon. So right now I'm doing what's necessary to do the work, but that doesn't mean I won't necessarily end up rooted in a specific place again in the future. Another piece of the performative score of #Walkabout is I don't know when it ends. I was like, I will not allow myself to say, you're doing this for exactly 6 months. You're doing this for exactly a year. Because that would give the project this sense of urgency, unnatural urgency, unnecessary urgency. So this takes as long as it takes. And the other piece of the score is I can stop it whenever I want to. So that just means I'm living in abundance. I'm living in kind of a constant state of doing exactly what I want, which I think is a really healthy thing for everybody to try and do if they can. I should also say I'm very lucky. I'm a free person, so I'm able to, be connected to my family all over the country, but I don't have kids. I don't have a significant other right now, so that also allows me incredible freedom.
That's wonderful. What is inclusion to you? Intersectional inclusion. What is that?
Well, intersectionality, it's not really a noun, it's more of a verb. So, it's a question of, what's that intersectional lens? When you're trying to create systems that serve everybody, and make sure that you have the people who are making decisions, the people who are managing resources, making sure those people actually reflect the fullness of the human beings they are serving. In all of those different identity markers, gender, ability, race, ethnicity. I feel like if you're not trying to be aggressively look at it through an intersectional lens, with great intentionality, your inclusion will fail. And it's hard because we're living in systems that were designed to exclude people.
Yes.
What's that Audre Lorde quote? I'm forgetting it. Something about the master's tool. You can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tool.
That's exactly what it is.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I mean, it's like the basic. It's a great, we know what you're talking about moment.
Yeah, that's me all over the place. I'm always like, what's that one quote by that one person?
Yes.
I get their name slightly wrong and their quote slightly wrong too. So just Google everything.
Yes. Asterisk for the whole rest of the interview. Check my facts because they're rounded.
What does inclusion mean to you? Because I was really struck when you were talking about the celebration and how you were tying inclusion and leadership together.
Yeah, I think that for me, inclusion, there's a personal inclusion and then systemic inclusion. And so I've heard a lot of people have critiques of the word inclusion on a systemic level because they say that it involves one group having power and actually bringing in or including another group. So for me, inclusion first started with working with high school students and specifically talking about how can you create inclusive classrooms, inclusive cafeterias, inclusive circle of friends. And so I think in the context of, hey, if you're at a lunch table and you see some kid eating alone, include them, expand your circle of friends. And so for me, in the context of actually applying it to people's lives right away on the personal level, that bringing in the like, oh, but it's not, the inclusion isn't a good word. We need to use like something more firm, whereas I feel it's accessible in meeting people where they're at. They've never talked about this before. So I think that's where it first starts, is that all of us have that personal power of when you see somebody not being included either on purpose or by default or because they're awkward or shy or you're awkward and shy, just finding a way to say like, hey, you want to come sit with us? Or hey, what's your favorite color? And I find that oftentimes we connect over the most trivial of things, and that trivial connection becomes a bridge for deeper conversations, which is what leads to the systemic, where we're talking about actually shifting power structures, where it's not just me as a white guy. I always have the ability to include people in a meeting because meetings are set up for me to have the biggest voice. But what can it look like where it's not by default that, but instead everybody has shared access?
So I have this habit of reading a lot of articles.
Okay.
If you follow me on Facebook, it's just, you get a lot of information.
Yes.
It's kind of like your own mini grad school. It's ridiculous. So I have this article that I've only just started reading this morning, but I'm super excited to finish it. And it's about the term inclusion. And a lot of other terms we use in this business of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So, the term white fragility, which was created by Robin DiAngelo, and just a lot of these terms that we're using around bias that are often designed to help the person who has the most power, who's using it in ways that are harming people, to make sure they feel good and safe and happy. And comfortable letting those practices go. And the person's critiquing the heck out of it. She's like, we need to shut that down.
Yes.
And I remember, like 10 years ago at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, just sneaking up on this issue because we're like, all right, like in the room, we're all like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna dismantle the systems of bias, yeah. But the sign was the most innocuous, sweet little sign that said something like, white privilege, is it a thing? With like a question mark. And like, and like the poster was of course made by somebody in HR, so it had like the wingding art or something from Word, and it was like crayons. And the backlash, like the extreme, like, what are you talking about? How dare you even mention the word white privilege? Like, folks flipped out. And then like 5 years later, after doing lots and lots of conversations and work, we can totally say the word white privilege. And people aren't like, how dare you say that I might have privileges? I'm not a millionaire. It's like,
I earned everything I have.
Exactly. It's complicated, I understand. So then I start using the word white supremacy because I'm like, can I use it yet?
Yeah.
Can I use it? Because that's the word. Like, that's what we're really talking about. I have some silly video I made years ago where I'm like, I think I called it racism and other useless terms. Because I'm like, racism? Are we really like, is the biggest problem in the United States all of the races not really working well together? Or is there one race that's kind of making it hard for everybody to function, even the white people? I think we're talking about white supremacy. I think that's the problem. Or like sexism. Are we really, like, is the big problem in the United States, women are so mean to men? Just if you look at who's in charge of everything, who's controlling all of the resources, it's patriarchy. We should talk about male supremacy because it's a thing. It exists. Although not according to YouTube. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I put out a video maybe about a year and a half ago where it talked about how white people or people of color can't be racist. And so it's, anytime we're using the word with an ism in it, we're talking about a power structure. Whereas so many people want racism to mean when one race is mean to another race, which is really a prejudice or bigotry or a stereotype. But if you're going to be bigoted or prejudiced towards me, you don't really have any systemic power. You know these things, but for other people, you know what I mean? It's you don't have any systemic power to hold me to that. You know, if you didn't want to rent me a house or you didn't want to give me a job or you wanted to talk smack about me on social media, I can go to another million other jobs or places. It's not going to affect me. You know what I mean? And so that's what you're saying is that racism, yes, it kind of points to it vaguely, but white supremacy is very clear.
Yeah. And then I also have to say you have to take all this vocabulary with a grain of salt. Because it changes like every 5 to 6 years. We have to come up with a new word that people haven't, attacked and twisted and made it mean something it doesn't actually mean. And then you, of course, you'll be in spaces where people don't have the vocabulary. They don't have the right words, but they have the practice. They have the understanding. So you'll be talking to somebody who's totally a white anti-racist. They are working hard on their stuff. And then they will use a word where you're like, oh, baby, don't ever use that word. Like, that's not a good word to use. Try this word instead. Or like, okay, so I'm in Ferguson, and we are in this room full of people of color, and folks are like getting real, like they're talking about their real experiences, and then one of the brown folks starts to talk about, what did she, no, I think she's talking about racism, but she's not talking about racism, she's talking about colorism, she's talking about, is it interracial, intraracial, thank you, where, like a darker skinned brown person is, receiving oppression from a lighter skinned brown person. Now this is all tied to white supremacy, right? But she's naming the racism of black people, and I can see the folks who know the vocabulary, they all are like, they're just, their hackles are up, they're ready to jump in, and of course one of them does, and is like schooling this brown person, and And I'm like, oh, we have to figure out how to have these conversations with more flexibility, with more kindness, and to understand that sometimes it's okay that they're not using the right words. That's not the point. Because I know a lot of folks who have a horrible practice, and they know all of our vocabulary, and they're using it to mean the opposite of what they're actually doing. So just vocabulary with a grain of salt.
Well, I think that's where I hear a lot of people saying that there needs to be like an element of grace or like a removal of ego, because sometimes it feels really good to publicly call somebody out, and everybody knows that I am down, I am woke, I know the term. I see this especially in people who have more privilege that want everybody to know I'm not one of them. So especially when you're doing groups where people have mostly are used to engaging in these conversations online, and now you're in person, and somebody stumbles upon something while they're thinking out loud. And it's like, wait a sec! Are you all watching, right? Facebook Live? You are an idiot! And it's like, it feels really good for the ego. But is it in line with really the objective?
So I was doing a workshop in New York in November. That was my first yes. The invitation was, will you come to New York and help us do this equity, diversity, and inclusion work with all these theater leaders? And I was like, yes. Go to New York City. And so they asked me to do a segment on calling in. And so I do this beautiful segment, and then and everybody loves it, all this affirmation, everybody's feeling like, yeah, I got tools to take back to my state, I'm gonna do this and that. I go home, I'm reading an article like I do every morning, and I realize, oh no, I've taught them the wrong term. I was not teaching them calling in. So you've talked about calling out, which is, sort of the aspect of it's shaming. Now, maybe it's positive shaming, but it's, the act of publicly stating this behavior that you are doing is counter to the proper mores of our society, and we don't want you to act like that or say things like that because that's not how we do things. That's calling out, and oftentimes it's ego-driven, and the point isn't actually to help that individual do better behaviors. The point is to prove to everybody else that you know what's supposed to be happening, and possibly let everybody know these are the negative consequences for not behaving correctly, right? So I'm not against, well, I guess I am against calling out. But I didn't teach them calling in, because calling in is taking somebody aside, not in front of the group, and being like, like low key, hey, so when you were singing real loud to that rap song, you were like, and the N word came out of your mouth, maybe you shouldn't be doing that in front of all the black kids. That's not great modeling. It's taking them aside, or being like, yo, man, when you were pinching her butt, and she was like, ha 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 ha, and she laughed like she liked it. She didn't really like it. It's because you're her boss, and she's afraid you're going to fire her, and I've got positional power, so I can tell you, don't do that, okay? But we're just going to do this in private. I'm just going to write you a little note about it. That's calling in. And it's kinder, it's softer, it allows the person to not be called out in public. It allows more space and time for that person to have their reaction. Because oftentimes when you do the call out, the person's immediate reaction is defensiveness because they're being attacked in public. They're like, ah! The call in, I think, is really problematic, though, and I'm against the call in. Because I think that what it does is it allows a moment it allows a moment where we're teaching the group that it's okay to do that behavior. Because when the behavior happens and nobody says, that's not cool, what we're implicitly saying is, that's cool. That's totally okay to happen in this space. And we all learn a lesson when we see that happen and nobody calls attention to it. So what I taught was calling up, which is a term I made up after I realized I taught something that was not quite calling in.
Yes.
So, the idea is, you always have to say, in the moment, immediately. You immediately have to say, wow, that's not cool. That's harmful to these populations, because you have to say it out loud. But then you don't have to yell it. You don't have to say it with harshness. You can say it with kindness. And you can also make sure that person understands, hey, we're not going to interrupt the work we're doing right now to help you process the feelings you're having about having learned this new thing. We're just going to say, hey, in this room, we don't do that. But later, I've got some resources that you can access. There's a website you can go to. I will send you this Everyday Feminism link. So that's the call up. The call up is, I think, having faith that the person can actually change their behavior. The call up is actually a compliment to that person. Where the call out, I think, is sometimes ego driven, like what you were saying.
Yeah, I think for me, in the end, it's the behavior that we want. And the terminology is going to fluctuate. Because some people might call what you just said, that might be what they mean by call in. And some people might mean that as call out. They might mean, well, call out to me is when you do it in public, but you should call out in a way that has empathy and grace. So I notice sometimes when you go to workshops, people spend so much time on terminology when really what matters more than the term is the behavior.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, what kind of people are you working with when you're doing, when you're trying to teach inclusion and help people be better leaders?
Well, first I started with, as I was saying, high school students. And then anytime you're doing youth work, everybody always wants you to work with middle school students. And middle school is the hardest age for anybody on the planet. I have the utmost respect for people who work with middle school students.
Seriously.
So it's mostly middle school and high school students. And then when I came here, I started working with people who work with young people. So mostly teachers. So for a while I was working with a group of people and we would train about 3,500 teachers in California each year in inclusion and anti-bias classrooms. Especially since so many schools were being cited for disproportionately suspending black and brown kids, even as young as preschool. So that's where it mostly started. And then it would be like some teachers, and it became school districts I'd work with and our team would work with, some corporate. And then I just wanted to apply that to adults in general. So it wasn't just one professional demographic. And that's when I started the Celebration Academy. And that's when I started this podcast, so that it's just accessible to our multitasking culture, where you can listen to this on the go and be receiving some sort of experiential learning while you're driving or cleaning the house.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've only been in LA for a couple of weeks, but it requires being in a car a lot. And without podcasts, I think I might have murdered someone.
Exactly.
Because what is going on with all this traffic? Oh my gosh, and all this space, y'all spread out.
I know.
New York knows what to do. You just stack up.
Exactly. It's like every time you type in your GPS, it's a different city. Santa Monica, Venice, Mid-City, Miracle Mile, Koreatown. It's like, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I was originally going to try and find a place to stay that was central to LA because I wanted to visit all these different places. I'd been invited to see the Chance Theater that's in Anaheim, and I really wanted to see that. And then I have these friends who are t-shirt designers, and they're in Pasadena. Now, everybody says they're in LA. They're all liars. Encino, that's not LA. That's Encino. Reseda, where I got to connect with my cousin, he's not in LA. That's different. Yes. He's in a town that's near LA.
Yes, exactly.
But I've been really grateful to be able to just witness all of the different beautiful practices. This area has a lot of people making art in innovative, beautiful ways.
Yes.
And all their communities are a little different too. I thought it was all going to be kind of the same, but Anaheim and Orange County is very different than the Valley, which is very different than Compton. Yeah.
Well, how do you think our surroundings or our environment influence us? Maybe we can jump off on that. Why do you think that is?
Well, gosh. So I remember being in New York, and I was teaching at Rikers Island, and at the same time I get these sort of like questions, and so I'm like, well, let me check this out. So I had decided I was really interested in the New York educational system, and I was trying to figure out, why are these students having these kind of outcomes? And I'm like, the only way I can figure this out is if I can get into as many schools as possible. And when people give you a tour of a school, it's totally different than when you're teaching inside the school. So I got these little tiny jobs, teaching little tiny classes in all these different schools. And I noticed that some of them looked exactly like Rikers Island. And I was like, that's weird. Like the same kind of bells, the same line down the center of the hallway. And I found out that they were designed by the same architect.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, school to prison pipeline, like literally right. It's like designed into the DNA of these spaces. So I do feel like performance space tells you how to perform. The space is a script. It's telling you, oh, turn this way, be soft in this way, be kind in this way, be mean in this way. Like when I went to Disneyland, their space is a script. So every space you're in is telling you things. And it's not just the signage, it's the way the lines are made. It's how much space there is between lines. And sometimes their spaces are saying, be a good person and stay in line. Sometimes their spaces are saying, buy this stuff right now. Please buy these things. And sometimes their spaces are saying, oh, this pathway is not one you want to go down. Go down this pathway instead. And I think that the world is full of those, right? And if we're good, we learn how to read the script. And we also learn the places where we can flip the script, change the script, the physical script of our space to make it more accessible. Not only in terms of different populations. For instance, the theater space can often tell a story of class and exclusion. And that's because a lot of times people are building a building and they want to tell a story of this is a very special place to get into.
It's prestige.
Yes! But it's also telling people, if you aren't dressed a certain way, you don't belong here. If you don't know how to talk and walk a certain way, this space is not for you. And so you have to find ways to have your space be inclusive and accessible. It says, hey, this space is for you too. And as a person with a disability, I am often reading a space, and oftentimes spaces are telling me, I'm not for you. You don't want to come in me. I'm full of stairs. The door doesn't have a button. It's really, really heavy. I'm going to be a space that has difficulties for you. I was not designed to allow you to function well in me. And I go, why on earth do we build spaces like that? Shouldn't we build spaces that are telling people the story of, you will behave well here. You will all be able to behave at your highest functionality in this space.
I think two things that brings up for me is it connected the dots for me is when they talk about leadership development, when you're trying to influence people, there's 3 levels you can do it in terms of giving them some sort of inspiration or emotional connection. You can use rules. Some people you can influence through rules or through the space. Like where people, they put little armrests on park benches so people can't sleep on it. That would be an example of influence through environment. So you're totally correct in that on the subconscious level.
Yeah.
The other thing you brought up for me is that from conversations I've had with people, and it's probably because of the privilege I hold in the society, that I think when we're talking intersectionality, that it seems like differently abled is an area of intersectionality that is often the most excluded in our conversations.
And I find it so complicated because the disability community, it is not homogenous, right?
Yes.
So you've got folks in the disability community who have an acquired disability, and they don't think of themselves as part of a disability community. They're just like, well, I just walk with a cane. What are you talking about? I'm not part of some community. But then if you're born into it, you're like, no, I'm Crip. This is my people. And so there are differences there. You've got people who are people first language. They're like, oh, I don't want you to define me by my disability. And then you have others who are like, actually, I'm the social model of disability. Call me disabled. That's cool. Like, I am disabled. And that's not an insult. That's a descriptor that accurately describes me. In the United States, the disability community is the largest population ever.
Wow.
Like, if you want to name somebody who belongs to a marginalized community, the disability community is always the largest. But a lot of the people who live in that community, they're transitional. They don't think of themselves as part of that community. The entire conversation about in the United States around healthcare, it impacts the disability community so much. And I like the social model where we talk about how is this space, how are these policies, how are these decisions we're making disabling a population that we want to work with? Because, lights are an accessibility tool for people who can't see in the dark.
Yeah.
Doors are an accessibility tool for people who can't walk through walls. We all need some things.
Yes.
It's just sometimes folks are like, well, I'm only going to make it accessible to this narrow population. And it's generally through enculturation that we have these sort of narrow ways of thinking. So, it's my hope that the work you're doing in the world, the work that I'm trying to do in the world, it's just going to make everything better for folks, because I don't think it makes any sense.
I agree. How do you think you create transformation and aha moments in terms of this work we're doing?
I don't know. I know that I have a lot of them. I love meeting people who are ready and open to talk about places where things aren't working. I love that. I love people who are like, yeah, let's talk about this piece of my practice that's harming people. Let's talk about this piece of our system or our institution where we're like, wow, why aren't we getting any brown people in the doors? What are we doing wrong? I feel like, one of the biggest tools to keep oppression in place is pretending it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We have a lot of habits that we grow up with that help us to pretend the problems aren't there. And in fact, it feels like the politest thing, the nicest thing is to not talk about it. I'm that person at the Thanksgiving table, though, that's like, let's talk about everything. Because at the end of that conversation, everybody's better. If you don't have the defensive, like, I'm mad at you reaction about talking about true things. The world is full of all of us. We got to figure out how we can all work together. How about you, though?
I think that it happens, I think the easiest way for it to happen is through a process. Where if you can get people involved in a process that's planned out, and some facilitators where they thought like a scientist, where first we're going to have you come in, we're going to make you feel comfortable, and then I think ultimately what it becomes is you bring someone to the edge of their comfort zone, and right when they're about to give up, bring them back to the kumbaya, we're all connected, and then bring them that connection they have. You have to apply it to the systemics. You bring them to the edge of their comfort zone, and then you bring them back, and I think it's that process to as high as they can get. But I think for the average person to be able to have someone just say to them, here's your self-awareness, reflected back to you, I think because most people, the worst thing you can be is just, let's use race, a racist. Because when people interview the KKK, they're offended. I'm not racist. What kind of person do you think I am? I just believe that, we're hating on white people too much. And that, like I've heard people say, black people have had their turn. Like, it's the white guy's turn. And they're like, oh my, like they might go home and tell them, can you believe someone thought I was racist? So if the KKK and Donald Trump and all these people, they don't think they're racist. Then you talk to somebody who genuinely is trying to make the world a better place, and you reflect behavior back that is racist or is in line with white supremacy. They're like, damn, I'm worse than the KKK, and I think it's too much for their values, and then so they experience it as shame. And so then the other thing to do is feel like you're a terrible person or deny it, neither of which is good for anybody. So I think that you usually need people to arrive at that conclusion for themselves through some sort of experience where they go, oh my God, I do that. Just the other day in a meeting, so there's one woman, she didn't talk at all, because they'd be like, what do y'all think? I'd be like, I got an idea. Oh my God, I do. I don't even notice this or that. I think when people can arrive at that conclusion for themselves, that's when you have the quickest transformation.
So I think that this comes from a practice of most of the rooms where I was building inclusion, they were rooms where we just had to because we were making a thing together. So it's like, oh, we're all making the Martin Luther King Day celebration together. And because I'm aggressively intersectional, I'm making sure I've got members of the entire community at the planning table. So it's a gigantic planning table, and it's full of people who don't necessarily agree. Do not necessarily agree on the right paths towards liberation, don't even necessarily agree on the same places where there are problems. But because we're building a thing together, where the end product makes us all feel good, you can have all these moments of learning, these moments of difference, at the tail end, you have this great experience where you feel really good. You've got all the feel-good chemicals going through your brain. You've shared the feel-good chemicals with an entire room full of people, right? And then they go off and they take it into their practice as well. So I feel like there's something to making things together. Like I'm, and this is, as I said before we started this interview, I was like, you're catching me as I'm building my company. Like I haven't launched yet.
Yes.
I'm doing a lot of work, and I love that people are like, ooh, let me pay you to do work. And I'm like, I'm not finished figuring it out yet, but I will do it with you. But I feel like one of the through lines is, oh, how about instead of us doing a training together, this is about us creating some materials for other people. So we're going to use your issue, your problem as just a great lab to work some stuff out. And then when we're done doing this work, we're going to have something we can share with others. We're going to let people know, hey, it's okay to say out loud, we had these issues, we had these problems. Don't be scared, because when we say it out loud, you'll feel brave enough to say you're having it as well. You'll be able to acknowledge the places where you're having inefficiencies, where you're hurting the people you're working with. And then maybe they'll be able to find solutions quicker and faster, and we can stop replicating the same work over and over and over again. Because I do feel like for the last decade, we've been spinning our wheels just a little bit. And I think it's time to level up. We need to.
This brings up for me that when people ask, how did I go from anti-bias to leadership development? And it's for me that when you're doing this kind of work, I notice that ultimately we come down to having to talk about or needing to talk about things like shame or wanting to be perfect or fear of failure, because so often people don't want to say anything or they don't want to even get involved in this process because they want to be perfect. They don't want to always seem like the perfect activist. I don't want to ever say the wrong thing or the wrong idea. Otherwise, I go back to this thing of shame. And same thing with the person who's racist. I know white guys who, for instance, people I know growing up, that for them, they had to be the best son ever. And they had to earn everything, and they had to be the richest, biggest person ever, or they wouldn't get the love of their parents. And so to then say to them, you need to admit that you did not earn everything you have. For them to admit that would be to say, I can admit that, but then I have to admit that I won't get the love from my parents because they said you have to earn everything you have. And so for them to even connect that this anti-bias conversation is actually connected to your love for yourself, your self-worth, and the messed up things that your parents implanted to you, even outside of race and gender and sexual orientation. And so you really got to get people to have a self-awareness on that level, because I think it takes a pretty confident and centered person to admit that, like, I have privilege, everything I do, or like, wow, I was a horrible person in high school, or like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this thing that I now hate in somebody else, I lived like that for 40 years. And I think it takes a really kind of developed person internally to cross that line.
Yeah, I always say that this work is like weeding a garden. Like, you don't weed once and you're like, that problem solved. I solved weeds. It's a practice. It's like if you want to have a healthy ecosystem, you have to keep working on it. And you have to also recognize that you might get one weed, and then once you get rid of that one, you didn't notice the other weed that was next to it. Now you have to get to that one too. Or like Jay Smooth. I love Jay Smooth. He did this great video where I don't remember what it was. I think it was like a TEDx talk maybe, where he was talking about how it was like having clean, like a healthy mouth.
Okay.
And like, you have to keep brushing your teeth and stuff. So when somebody comes to you and is like, oh, you have a little something, you don't go, I went to a dentist like 3 years ago. I had that training. I solved my gingivitis. There's nothing in my teeth.
I posted it on Facebook. Come on. Got 100 likes.
I'm woke. What's going on? Jay Smooth. I love him. But yeah, I'm in full agreement with what you're saying. Yeah. Oh. All right. So are there any... oh gosh. Well, I'm just trying to figure out what are the different ways I can access your work. Like, how do I get into the celebration?
Okay, so if you want to join the celebration, one of the best ways is just go to tomrell.com/courses or tomrell.com/30 days free, and you can just sign up for 30 days of free membership to the celebration. Or if you want a 30-minute one-on-one coaching session, you can also find that at tomrell.com/courses.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Being a digital nomad, I've been finding that being able to connect to people through their websites, through their social media, it's just been a real gift. Especially me, I'm disabled. I'm oftentimes literally just trapped in a bed, and my only way to connect to folks is through my computer. So I love this. I'm just going to make this plea to you.
Yes.
I've been, just doing all this research on who are the people in the world who are thought leaders in this work, and who are the people who are articulating these ideas in beautiful ways that will help others to learn from them. And I'm finding that YouTube is full of poison. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, is it concentrated, or like folks being like, I'm going to pay all these people money to make crazy videos? I just know I Google the term, or not Google the term, I YouTube search the term. Like last night I was like, let me see what comes up when I put in patriarchy. The first video is a young woman who's actually saying this is what patriarchy is, because I wanted to hear how do other people describe it. Nice young woman, she describes it, she does a pretty good job. I'm like, that's cute. Next video is somebody being like, patriarchy doesn't exist, it's a lie, there's no such thing as patriarchy. Next video, same thing. Next video, same thing. And each one more poisonous than the next. And I'm like, what is happening? Why are there so many lies out there? So just, if you can, keep making videos and putting truth in the world. And label it with as many tags as you can, so that when I Google patriarchy, I see Tom Earl.
Well, that's like if you I learned there's from Jessica Valenti that if you Google rape, the first things that come up is rape porn.
Yeah, it's horrible. But I go, we can fix it.
Yes.
Or at least maybe I'm naive. I'm a little utopian. I will admit that.
Naive, or you have hope. You have a vision. That's the way I look at it.
Well, I just figure if we can talk about making these literal physical spaces more accessible, less harmful, I feel like we can do that to the digital spaces too. So every time I meet somebody who's doing this kind of work in the world, I'm just like, please fill the digital space with good medicine. We need good medicine.
Yes, indeed. And where can folks reach out to you and tell you how much they appreciate you and stay connected?
They can email me at callingupjustice@gmail.com. They can also, if they're interested, I don't have the Calling Up Justice webpage up yet because I'm trying to make it do fancy things that the webmaster was like 3 weeks ago was like, yeah, that's going to take some time. We have to build a space that can do those things. So in the meantime, people can check out every28hoursplays.org. One of the programs of Calling Up is a series of scripts, literal scripts that are about Black Lives Matter, the current civil rights movement. So if your community is trying to work through issues of race and difference and really seriously talk about the fact that people are getting killed in our country by officers of the state. Brown people are being killed, and it's a gigantic problem, and it's hard for us to even talk about it. If they want to help their communities deal with that issue, acknowledge that issue, talk about it, with a brilliant writing from playwrights like Lynn Nottage and playwrights who from Ferguson, they can go to every28hoursplays.org.
That's wonderful. Do you want anybody to follow you on Instagram or anything like that?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I'm really bad at this. I'm gonna get better. Like 6 months from now, I'm gonna be like a social media maven, and I'll be like, just follow me at this. Everything is my name. Twitter at Claudia Alick. Facebook /Claudia Alick, ClaudiaAlick. Instagram, it's Claudia Alick. Is Instagram at?
Well, all of it's at.
I don't know.
Yeah, Claudia Alick as well. They're all at.
But if folks follow me on Facebook, they can get a lot of really great resources. Because whenever I find something where I'm like, oh, I just learned something, I try and share it with my community.
Yes. So for the folks driving, don't worry, I got your back. TomRoll.com/Claudia. That's CLAUDIA, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, TomRoll.com/Claudia. 3 times every time. Claudia, TomRoll.com/Claudia. All of the links that Claudia just mentioned are going to be in the show notes. So head there, or as easy as TomRoll.com/blog, and just scroll down so you find Claudia's blog post on there. All the links are going to be there. As we sign off, I've been asking every guest this year, what is courage?
And can I ask you a question as well? All right, so I've been asking everybody what they think our field will need in leadership in the next 5 to 10 years. So what is courage? I think courage is being able to fully acknowledge your fears and face them.
Do you have a role model for courage?
Oh golly, I feel like I'm receiving inspiration from people every single day. So, I'm receiving inspiration, models of courage and leadership from all the people I'm following on Twitter, my disability community, my social justice activist community. I just had an amazing conversation with Luis Alfaro, so my artistic community. So I can't name one person. There's a lot of folks out there that I'm getting so much inspiration from.
Last courage question. what does everyday courage look like in your life?
All right. Well, I don't know. I feel like I'm working through stuff where my first instinct is to be like, I'm not courageous. Oh, I'm no one. Don't listen to me. But the truth is, I lead my life every day in a level of constant pain. So just literally getting up, doing things means that like the first thing I do is, all right, you're comfortable lying here still. We're about to receive more pain. Just getting up, just doing anything. So for me, every day is an exercise in courage. And I recognize that there are people, like the people that we just see walking down the street, you have no idea what's going on inside their body, what's going on inside their lives. And generally, just going through the world, making that income, gathering those resources, being there for your loved ones, it's all an act of courage.
That the whole reason I am doing my year of courage is because I was noticing that we always viewed courage as the mom lifting the car up that was backed up onto her kid, or like somebody saving someone from a burning fire. Whereas I think that we all live everyday courage in a way that people want a little part of. They want, like, I dig that. I want that a little bit in my life. So I appreciate you working through what you were saying so you could share your truth with us.
Yeah. Now, leadership.
Yes, leadership. So the question is, what in the next 5 years are people going to need leadership in their field?
Well, I've been asking folks, generally they're part of the performance field, but I'm asking, you can define it any way you want, whatever the field is, but what are we going to need in leadership in the next 5 to 10 years?
There's so many things that come to mind. First thought that comes to mind is, they should really become a member of the Celebration Academy. You can try your first month free. That's $10. I guess let's go 3 areas. Let's do 3 takeaways. One is that we really have to come to terms, or we really have to become the lifelong intersectional inclusive leaders. That this whole conversation we're having, that the more you can bring this on, this self-awareness, and really knowing, because I think it opens you up to love. And it just, for me, what's unique is that since I started college and until now, all the leaders in my field and people that I had to get, permission from to move on have all been women. All my bosses have been women. All the nonprofits I've worked at, I've been the only guy. And so that's changed the way that I interact with the world. I think it's made me a much better person than before, when I was kind of in this box that I was programmed into. So I think all leaders have really got to dive into this, especially white guys doing thought leadership and leading these huge leadership conferences, and that you see on your Facebook ads where they have stadiums full of people come. I know this one white guy who he certifies coaches, and it's $10,000 to get certified, and he'll get hundreds of people a year get certified. And the idea is then that you can then train people for $10,000, right? Or you can become a professional speaker. And most of the people that he's training are women, but I've never seen him have a woman speaker at his event. And so the message that says to me is, hey, look, you can be a speaker, you can do this for a living, just not on my stage. And it's just, it turns me off so much that I've stopped going to their events, even though they're so good at what they talk about. And so for them, diversity isn't just the fact that you have 15 languages being translated or 100 different countries in the audience. When I still look, I majority see white people, majority see white guys. And even if I don't look at the audience, when I look on stage and hear your examples, it's all white guys. And it's just like, we got to put an end to that stuff. You know what I mean? It's the first thing. Second thing is that every single person on this earth, including the leader, has a unique set of gifts, experiences, and strengths. And that where they intersect, the famous quote is where your passions and interests intersect with your unique strengths, there's your opportunity to serve. Especially when you couple that with Howard Thurman's quote of, people always ask, how can I change the world? When what we really need is people who should be asking themselves, how can I come alive? Because what's going to change the world is people who are alive. And so that right there. Last thing, I know I'm going on. You asked me like a question that's mine. Is really, we need to start asking this question is, what would this look like if this was easy? And that's a Tim Ferriss proposes that. But my big aha moment for the past year is that I'm addicted to effort. I'm addicted to struggle. I'm addicted to like the rags to riches or the bootstrap story. And that my mindset is that, no, you gotta put in tons and tons and tons of work. And that's where success comes from. Where success can come from, you know what? I'm curious about something and it just comes into your life. Like this whole interaction right here, I was thinking, you know, it'd be interesting if somebody wanted to use my room this month. I thought of that on Tuesday. On Thursday, somebody tagged you and you were in. And then you're a guest in this whole conversation. We don't know whose life this interview is going to change. And it can be that easy. And so much when we're talking about creating a better world, we're talking about the struggle and we're talking about all the hardships people are going through, which is real. We shouldn't dismiss those, but at the same time, we should look for those moments of grace and those moments of beauty and relaxation and ease because they humanize people just as much as pointing out the struggles that they go through. So
I look forward to making this all easier. Right on. I love that.
I'd like for you to have the last word since you're a guest here at the celebration, if you don't mind. What would you like to invite people who are listening to? What would you like them to consider or do or reflect upon or anything? What's your invitation to our listeners?
My invitation is for everyone to call folks up, to believe in other people's ability, institutions' ability, organizations' ability, individuals' ability to be better. So when we witness those moments where you're like, whoa, why are you doing that? Instead of just walking away with that idea or talking to your friend about it, let's call them up, literally, and say, hey, why don't you do this better?
I dig that. Follow Claudia. Show her your support, continue to gain resources and friendship and awesomeness from Claudia's amazing way you're living your life. It's been such an honor having you here. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. This was delightful. And I can't wait to see the other celebration videos and look at the podcast.
Yes.
Yay.
I agree. That's a great plug. Check them all out. TomReal.com/podcast or TomReal.com/blog. We're on Stitcher, iTunes, all of that kind of stuff. Anything else? All right. As always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at TomEarl.com/join. Subscribe below or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.